Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the Bonfire Briefing Podcast. This week I talked with former Libertarian presidential candidate Sam Robb. We had an awesome conversation. We talked about ending the war on drugs, some of the different projects he's working on, and, according to him, the largest furry convention in the United States, which he attended not too long ago. I didn't know that I'd ever spend any of this podcast talking about furries, but it happened. And it was still a really great conversation. Hope you guys enjoy. All right, there we go. We should be live. Sam Robb, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Taylor. I appreciate you inviting me on.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad that you could join us today for the show. We were just talking about some of the stuff you had been up to recently, and you mentioned LibertyCon in Chattanooga. I'm actually from Tennessee. I don't live there anymore. Actually looking to go back here in a few weeks, visit some family over Memphis area. You talk a little bit about LibertyCon. What was it like over there? I wish I was in the back in my home state so I could have went.
It's LibertyCon was fantastic. I've been wanting to go there for years, literally. I got a membership and registered to attend back in 2019. So you can imagine what happened in 2020 was that it got delayed and then it got delayed again, and
Right.
finally was able to go. After 3 years, significant enough time delay for me that when I registered, I was not a published author, and when I got to attend, I was, which was kind of cool. But it's a literary science fiction and fantasy convention, very much geared towards authors and publishers. I'd say probably about a third, maybe more, of the attendees were writers or publishers or related editors related to the publishing business. So it was very, very interesting to meet some of the people that I've been reading for years, and in some cases decades. And get a chance to say hi to them and talk to them about publishing business and about writing in general. Came out of there with a renewed commitment to sitting down and writing every day. So I've got three targets, daily targets now. I want to do some writing, I want to do some editing, and I want to do some reading to kind of keep the creative juices flowing. So it was a wonderful time. Had a ball. The people down there were amazing, and not just the convention goers. All the people that we met in Chattanooga were fantastic. Just loved the city. Loved what we saw of it. Had an absolute blast, and I think we're going to try and go back next year and probably leave a couple of days before and after so that we can actually explore some more and get a feel for the town and meet up with some people that we know down there, because it was really awesome.
Yeah, man, Chattanooga is an awesome little town. I haven't been in quite some time actually. It's been quite a while since I've been over there, but like that whole east side of the state is really just there's some, I mean, all the way from Chattanooga, Knoxville, out towards some of the towns near the mountains, everything like that. It really is just a beautiful, beautiful part of the state, man. You'll definitely have to do some exploring next time you're down there.
Oh, it absolutely was gorgeous. Just walking around town in the morning. I like to go out, and one of the things I do is I walk and I take pictures. And I think about things, and that's my thinking time and my oh, this would make a good story time. And just getting out and walking around Chattanooga, just all the sights to see. It just really tickled me. It was awesome.
Yeah, no, it's oh man, yeah, no, it's such a great town. Now you mentioned before we hopped on, another convention, one that I'm a bit less familiar with. that you also attended
Yeah,
Anthrocon. Is that was the
Anthrocon.
name of
Yeah,
it?
I did.
Up in
I
Pittsburgh.
up in Pittsburgh every year. It's the largest furry convention in the U.S. I believe it might even be the largest furry convention in the world. I've never attended Anthrocon. Never actually signed up and gone. But every year I try to make it down to Pittsburgh, either on a Friday or a Saturday, just to walk around the convention center, check it out, see all the people in their fursuits. Um, it's one of those things that I mean, people put a ton of time and effort and creativity into creating these costumes, and it's incredibly impressive. Some of the things they accomplish. Um, the and Honestly, as a libertarian, right, seeing people, and I hope no furries take offense at this, because I mean it, genuinely and honestly. But just seeing you let your freak flag fly is awesome. I just love it. It's fantastic. They don't, yeah, they're just doing themselves and being who they are, and don't really care about it. And it's huge too. When I say it's the biggest convention, I think it's like 9 or 10,000 people
Oh man,
this year,
damn.
and yeah, they sold out. I think 12 hotels, or maybe even more hotels in downtown Pittsburgh. So I mean, we saw, traveling through the city yesterday, we saw basically furries at just about every corner of the city at one point or another. Which is kind of, I mean, it's just like I said, it's awesome to see. And but I also I also felt bad. We saw a couple of ladies that had taken off their heads on their fursuits, and you could tell, yeah, maybe July is not the best time to be walking around outside in a complete full body suit. Um, but it just shows you, man, they're dedicated. They want to get out there, and the number of people I saw posing for pictures with kids, with folks, just happy to be there and excited to see that. There was a pirate game going on that let out about the same time that everybody was going to dinner, so we had two different crowds mingling, and it was really kind of cool.
Yeah, I actually went up to Pittsburgh. I'm trying to remember. It's been a couple months now. It was my first time up there. I was visiting some different friends, and um, one of the first things I did when I got there was go to a Pirates game, and I can't remember who they were playing, but there was something, almost 30 runs were scored
Holy cow!
during the game, and it was my first pro baseball game that I had ever been to. I'm a pretty casual baseball fan, but
Yeah,
my buddy is a pretty big fan, so we went, and it was it was pouring down rain when we went, which was which not something we had really planned for, but that's just what happened. And of course, there weren't that many people there because they didn't want to get drenched, so we were able to move up and get some real good seats. And
awesome.
no, man, it was a really good time. I'm actually looking to go back sometime during the summer. I live down in South Texas, and it's the heat down here is pretty miserable. I think spending a week or two up north might not be a bad idea. You have any recommendations of stuff to do in Pittsburgh whenever I visit again?
Oh man, there's a ton of stuff. You've got the Pirates games, like you said, Riverhound soccer. That's across the point from the Pirates Stadium. Um, the South Side's always fun. We've got a ton of restaurants on the South Side, in the Strip in Lawrenceville. Um, it's really kind of a foodie paradise if you're into trying different things. Um, Museums, we've got, up in Oakland, you've got the Carnegie Museum of Natural History. You've got the Mattress Factory, which is more of a modern art museum. Um, the Warhol Museum. Um, the Buell Science Center. Uh, you can go tour the USS Requin, which is a World War II era submarine that is docked on the riverside down by the Science Center.
Oh wow.
Definitely ride the incline if you get the chance, going up and down the Mount Washington. Mount Washington's a great place to just stroll and take some pictures of the city. Uh, there's a ton of stuff to do, but like I said, for me, one of the things that I really enjoy in the city is just being able to walk around, check things out, see the different neighborhoods, uh, see what's going on. Every neighborhood has its own bit of character. Um,
Right.
Squirrel Hill is different, entirely different uh, from going up on Polish Hill. Very different from Mount Washington. Um, in terms of restaurants and shops and everything. Definitely, if you do get to come down, if you have the chance during the day, go check out the Strip District. That is just a lot of fun. There's a ton of stores, ton of restaurants, souvenir shops, all sorts of different places that do metalworking, chocolate, Pennsylvania Libations, which is one of the only non-state stores where you can buy alcohol and distilled spirits, and they get away with that, I think, because everything they sell is made in Pennsylvania. So
Oh wow.
it's there's some really cool stuff you can find if you just walk around and poke your nose in some places.
Yeah, no, there definitely is. It's a great city, and I think I'll heed your advice. I don't think I'll be wearing a big furry suit whenever I visit. I know it's probably not quite as hot up there, but still doesn't really sound like a good idea when you're walking around the
Oh no.
city trying to visit. Um, but no, man. I wanted to, really glad you could come on. The show. I've been seeing your tweets and following you a little bit. And I wanted to ask, how did you get involved in politics? What was kind of your start in getting involved in the political realm, and uh, how did you end up becoming a libertarian?
um, well, becoming a libertarian was that happened a long time ago. um, I've always been a fan of I mentioned earlier, LibertyCon, Science Fiction Convention. I've always been a fan of Robert Heinlein, F. Paul Wilson, uh, L. Neil Smith, a bunch of other writers that are very libertarian. So for the longest time, I'd say probably back to about 2000 or so, I would describe myself as conservative
Mm.
or Republican with libertarian leanings. Um, Maybe about a decade ago, uh, yeah, it was the Mitt Romney nomination that really kind of pushed me out of the Republican camp and into the Libertarian camp. Um, I didn't see either party really interested in making any significant changes or returning liberty to the people, so I decided to go with the party that did. And then back in 2019 or so, decided, being a libertarian and having grown up in the United States where they tell you that anybody could grow up to be president, I decided to run for president. Sought the libertarian nomination. Didn't get it, obviously. Jo Jorgensen did. I was proud to be able to endorse her, and spend some time in Pennsylvania working for her and on her campaign with her and Spike Cohen. But that was kind of a feet first, getting thrown off the pier into the deep end sort of introduction to politics. I wouldn't recommend it necessarily, but I did have a lot of fun. Got to meet some amazing people, folks that my wife and I still keep in touch with across the country, folks that I'm still working with. I'm on the board of People for Liberty with Jo Jorgensen and Dan Fishman, another couple of other gentlemen that you might recognize, Jim Gray and Judge Jim Gray and Jim Babka from
Hmm.
Downsize DC. Lady by the name of Chris Crawford, who's heavily involved in politics up in I believe, Massachusetts. So these are all people that I met through this kind of my escapades there, and got to know a bunch of people in Pennsylvania that really got to be good friends with. Christine Kusler Womack, who was my uh, I don't know if I was her right hand man or if she was my right hand lady, but the two of us were working together on Joe and Spike's campaign here in Pennsylvania, and couldn't have done it without her. And she is absolutely amazing, folks. Folks that I would not have met otherwise, and I'm tremendously glad to have met. I'm also tremendously glad to not be as involved as I was at the beginning, because it really was like having it campaign. The campaigning itself was a lot of fun. There was a lot of effort put into that, but it was a lot of fun. You got to travel, you got to meet people, you got to talk to people about all sorts of things. Um, After that, running Joe's campaign, getting involved in Pennsylvania at the state level with the state Libertarian Party committee, um, was like having a second job. I mean,
Right.
literally, I got to the point where I would wake up around 7 o'clock, um, let the dogs out, sit down with my laptop, work for 3 hours before I had to, go to work to do my day job. I'd come home, eat dinner, and then I'd sit down and work for another 4 or 5 hours in the evening, um, helping candidates, clearing up issues with election boards, doing all sorts of stuff. And it's taken some time to decompress from that, but I'm actually really glad. That's one of the reasons why I have more time now for things that I really do enjoy. Making sure I could get out, get those walks and decompress, um, doing more writing, just have it just kind of being able at this point to look at different activities in the libertarian world and in the liberty world, and figure out, okay, here's some place where I can do something that I guess fits my talents a little bit better than running running full tilt and holding down a second job in politics.
Yeah, I can definitely imagine that, running your own campaign and then, going straight from that to working for Joe's campaign it had to keep it kept you pretty busy.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
what were some of the big policies that you prioritized during your run for president?
Oh wow. For me, there were a couple. I kind of did an A to Z, which isn't really. I wouldn't recommend that for a candidate. Having gotten some more experience, you learn by doing sometimes, and sometimes you learn by failing or
Right.
not doing things the right way. Um, my advice for a candidate, if you're going to run these days, would be pick your top three, your top three issues that you want to deal with, and focus on those. For me, looking back on it, I would say my top three were probably immigration, the economy, and individual liberties. And the that kind of wraps up a bunch of different aspects of things that I talked about in policies. Immigration, I thought, and I still think that immigration is what made our country great. My grandparents were immigrants. My on both sides of the family. Um, uh, I work in an industry. I'm a software developer. I work in an industry where we have a lot of people that come to the U.S. on visas to work here, and end up either staying or getting going through the steps to become naturalized citizens. So it's one of those things where you know I've had to deal with the immigration service myself. My three daughters are all adopted from overseas, so I've got an insight into just how tangled that process can be, and it's a mess. It really is, and it doesn't serve our country well. What we really need is a return to uh, the more permissive model, the Ellis Island sort of immigration model that we used to have, Right now, we're basically saying, hey, we'll let you in if we think you're good. Uh,
Right.
Ellis Island used to be, hey, we'll let you in unless we think that you're gonna be a problem. Unless you've got a criminal history, you've got some medical problems, whatever, right? But it was much more permissive. Basically, hey, if you want to come to America, if you want to be an American, we want you here. And that really is what made America great. That's what allowed us to grow and expand. And you didn't really see, I don't think, uh, a lot of problems with immigration until you started getting into larger government. Um, getting the federal government more involved in what's going on. So I think number one, I would have said return to immigration to being much more permissive. Number two, economy. Just get the government out of the economy. It puts its thumbs on all sorts of scales, causes all sorts of problems. We're seeing that now with gas prices, and you see it through with various different laws. Certificate of need laws for medicine. Where the state or local government says, we're not going to let you, for example, we're not going to let you put another MRI machine in a county unless all your competitors there agree that that there should be another MRI machine facility, which is absolutely ridiculous that you would run things that way. But
Right.
that's the way we do in a lot of ways. Licensing, occupational licensing laws, a lot of those are nuts. Pennsylvania, we have state stores. I mentioned that earlier, where it's the government actually, they have a monopoly on selling distilled spirits and alcohol. It's really kind of nuts the way that the government gets involved in the economy, and really, let's pull back from that. Let's get the government out of interfering with our economic relationships with each other. And then, like I said, the last one was kind of individual liberties, and that's kind of a catch-all for a lot of things. Um, you know, examining our civil liberties in the United States, where we stand on that. Taking a look at one of the phrases that came up a lot was defund the police, and
Mm-hmm.
it was really interesting for me, right? Because I agree with that 100%. Uh, but I'll put a caveat there. I'd like to change that and say we should be defunding law enforcement, because police are supposed to be peacekeepers. They're supposed to
Mm-hmm.
be there just like the fire department. If you have a problem, it's somebody that you can call to help you out, right? You don't have the fire department going around and coming onto your property and we're going to do a surprise inspection of your house or whatever. Uh, you they're not looking for problems. They're there to help you solve problems. We moved from a model of policing in the United States that used to be the very kind of the Pelian uh, community policing, where police officers were members of the community that basically had the same responsibilities as everybody else in the community to keep the peace, to make sure that everything functioned smoothly societally, but they did it full time as opposed
Mm-hmm.
to people doing it part time. And I think we would be served incredibly well in the United States by stopping to take a look at what's happened to our peacekeepers, at what's happened to our police forces that has changed them from being peacekeepers into being law enforcement. Because when you stop and think about it, keeping the peace and enforcing the laws are two entirely different things. And I think it's our view of the police as, oh, there's laws that they need to make sure that everybody follows, versus, you know what, we're going to make sure that nobody's hurting anybody, nobody's taking anybody's stuff, that we're keeping our hands to ourselves, as I think it's Sergeant Tom Cotton from oh man, what's Bangor, Maine Police Department likes to use that phrase. Keep your hands to yourself. Be kind to one another. Very libertarian thoughts. But aside from that, the police should be there as a resource when we are in trouble, not something that is out there that we have to be afraid of. So there you go. Those were my three big ones.
Right. Well, what do you think caused that shift in our law enforcement? Because I definitely think you're right. They used to be a more peacekeeping force, but I don't know that I don't know that anyone, regardless of where they are on the political spectrum, would describe them really as that now. What do you think caused that shift? I mean, was it how could we maybe go back to that more preferred method of policing? Is it something to do with
Yeah.
training and recruitment? I mean, what are some tangible solutions there you think that we could use to maybe fix some of the problems that we're seeing way too often?
I think that the root of the problem goes back to prohibition, right?
Hmm.
It's an experiment that we had with, hey, let's go ahead and outlaw alcohol in the United States, and we saw how well that worked. We actually are continuing to see how well that works, even here a century later, right? Because it was prohibition that gave rise to organized crime in a lot of places in Chicago and New York. Crime families that have continued on to this day, organizations that have continued on to this day. Uh, Really, and you saw that replicated in the 50s, 60s, 70s with the war on drugs, and again, continuing
Right.
today. Whereas I think Joe Jorgensen like to say, and I think I heard Spike say this at least once or twice too, the war on some drugs, right? Yeah, if your drug of choice, like Joe Jorgensen, is bourbon, if your drug of choice, like so many other Americans, is nicotine or caffeine, then that's quite okay, right? It's just some drugs that the government has problems with. Um, I think the war on drugs really, this prohibitionist regime, is really what has funded, fueled, and driven us from the Andy Griffith style community police, you know, uh, into this law enforcement realm, um, because you task these guys with doing the impossible, with rooting out. Uh, Basically, okay, you need to go keep people from smoking, but not smoking in general, smoking this one particular plant that seems to be popular, and it can be done anywhere, it can be grown anywhere, and you don't achieve any measure of success there without a surveillance state, without essentially moving to a police state. And even then, you can't win. We know that. We know we know that very well from from history, that there's nothing that's going to completely eradicate that. And even getting to the point where you kind of limit the availability of those substances to the population in general, you're doing it in a way that causes more harm than good. Not to we kind of saw that recently, right? In with COVID, where the response to it, we're starting to see, and I mean, libertarians pointed this out from the beginning. We, I did, Joe and Spike did, we all did, right? That the response was going to cause more damage than the disease ever could have, and we're actually starting to see that. That's exactly where we are, and what we're seeing, what we saw with alcohol prohibition, what we're seeing with the war on drugs, is that the effort to, you know, eradicate those the use of those substances, the response to that is causing far more damage than the drugs themselves ever could have. So honestly, if we want to reverse this situation that we're in, End the war on drugs. Get rid of it. Legalize marijuana. Go to, possibly even go to, um, trying to think what the country is. Portugal, I think, did a decriminalization model where they basically said, yeah, we realize that there are some people who are going to use these drugs, and we're not going to criminalize use. That opens you up to, hey, it's a lot easier to say, to go to your counselor or go to your employer and say, hey, I need help. I'm
Right.
dealing with substance abuse issues. I need help, and know that you're not going to end up in jail. You're not going to end up fired. You're not going to have your life ruined. Um, and we're kind of in that situation where you can do that a little bit, but we really need more. We need to recognize that drug use often is not a it's not something in and of itself. It can be, but a lot of times what you see with alcohol abuse, for example, what you can see with overuse and abuse of marijuana or other substances, is not, hey, I'm an addict because I want to be an addict. What you have is, I am an addict because I have some underlying mental health issues, or I have some underlying history, uh, you know talking, undiagnosed PTSD, whatever it is. And I found a way to medicate myself. I found a way to try and deal with what I've been going through, because I didn't understand what it was. A lot of times I think our drug abuse issues that we have are mental health issues. A lot of times I think our policing issues that we're dealing with are war on drug issues. Um, if we would understand that, and if we change our viewpoint, if we would stop prosecuting people for growing a plant, if we would stop prosecuting people for trying to treat their pain, whether mental or physical, I think we would go a long way towards getting some balance back in this country.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it's the time to end the war on drugs was before it ever even started, and we've been
Yeah,
continuing this this policy that we know does not work. We know it doesn't work, and like you said, it obviously does more harm than good. It doesn't really seem to be doing any good, as a matter of fact.
yeah.
Um, Yeah, no, and we've got to wrap up here before too long. I'm actually talking to Dan Berman um, in about half an hour or so.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah,
Tell him I said hi. Dan is a fantastic guy. My wife loves him. He is awesome.
yeah, no, yeah, no, he really great guy. Can't wait to talk to him. I'll absolutely let him know you said hello. There's a couple more things I wanted to talk to you about before we hopped off here. And
Shoot.
you talked about it a little before, but the People for Liberty group that you're with
Mhm.
Joe and those other guys that you mentioned. What all are y'all involved with over there? What's y'all's kind of mission, your purpose? What kind of things are y'all involved with that group?
Well, one of the things that we're doing, I like to describe it as, we're trying to help liberty-minded people who want to do liberty-minded things connect with other liberty-minded people.
Mm,
Um, we're working on building communities online, so and social communities, building out event calendars to help people understand what's going on in activities they can participate in. Um, we're going to be working on trying to help people identify and connect with people working on legislative issues that might concern them. But the whole goal is one, to help people who are interested in liberty and freedom and individual rights to connect with one another, to build a community, but two, to also find those people who have specific interests, specific liberty interests in one particular niche, and kind of expose them to the idea that what they're seeing may not be just one, just their particular issue that is an issue of liberty, but that their same concerns in, for example, with uh, you know the war on drugs, the same issues that they have with uh, uh, dealing with government involvement in the medical system, the same issues that they might have with government schooling, uh, carry over to other areas.
Hmm.
So that and honestly, the idea is to take people who are kind of libertarian in one area or liberty minded in one area, right? And get them to think, you know what, maybe this isn't just this part of the government that's a problem. Maybe it's a lot of the parts of the government that all seem to have these same issues, and just build out a community of people who understand. Uh, you know, Gary Johnson said, right? Most people are libertarians; they just don't realize it. Uh,
Right.
we'd like to help them realize that, yeah, this is where you are. This is this isn't unusual. The fact that you think that our government is too big and that our government has too much power and that our government should back off and let people just live their lives. That isn't a radical idea. That's the American idea. That's the foundation of the country. I mean, we're celebrating it this weekend, right? We basically told
Right.
the British to leave us alone, let us live our life the way we want, and we're trying to get people to understand that, hey, whatever sphere you're in, where you're saying, I see the government causing problems here. It's not just there; it's all over the place.
Man, it's awesome that y'all are doing that too, because I feel, like you said, I feel like being a libertarian is kind of the default setting for most people. They just don't realize it because of the way our political system is set up. Really,
Yep.
you feel like that if you're not a Democrat and you're not a Republican, then you kind of just don't belong. And it makes people feel politically isolated, like they don't have any allies, that they don't have anyone that's trying to get involved with the system and make the changes that they want. But in reality, we're all, not everyone is a libertarian, but like you said, I feel like most people are. They don't know it yet, and they don't, in a lot of places they don't see other libertarians out there fighting for them, so they kind of just feel alone. So it's really
Yeah.
awesome that y'all are doing that and helping people get connected and get more involved, man. That's really awesome.
Well,
um
thank you. We're trying.
just one last thing before we hop off here. Tom Queter is a mutual connection of ours. He was
Mhm.
he was on the podcast a while back. Had a really awesome conversation with him. You said you've been working with him on a project with the group that he made. What kind of stuff are y'all working on? I'm real curious.
Well, for those of you who are not familiar with Tom, Tom is wheelchair bound. He's been
Oh,
basically.
all right, now we're back on after some technical difficulties. Not entirely sure what happened, but we're back. But yeah, if you just wanted to talk a little bit about the project that you and Tom are working on, and what y'all are doing with that.
Yeah, that actually, I started to say Tom is, for those in your audience who don't know him, is wheelchair bound. He has been for basically since he was a child, um, and the wheelchair model that he likes, that a lot of people, not just him, but a lot of people in his situation that basically are quadriplegics or paraplegics and need uh, a wheelchair constantly. Uh, his wheelchair design is fantastic. It's head and shoulders above just about anything else that I think you can find out there. Um, but the chair itself, the company that made it was sold, and then the company that took them over, as might happen when this happens, the design of the chair was changed. And it got away from what made it so attractive to Tom and a lot of other people, and some of the patents on the chair are either expired or going to be expiring, and we're looking at basically recreating this design that so many people liked. Tom got in touch with me because I'm a software developer. He's actually been in communication with Dan Berman, which I believe you said you're going to be talking to soon.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is really it's an incredible story because Tom's current wheelchair and kind of I think the backup wheelchair that they have for him have all been crowdfunded through from libertarians. The government really is kind of at a loss for what to do because with Tom, because I think he was supposed to have passed away when he was like 12 or something. So he's pushing 40 and still going, running for Congress and
Right.
doing all these projects. But he is an amazingly tough guy. He is very dedicated, and what he saw in his life was that the government wasn't really able to help him. It was voluntary associations and libertarians and liberty-minded people that stepped up to give him a hand. So we're looking at building building out a team to work on maybe recreating this wheelchair design. I've got contacts, here in Pittsburgh at Carnegie Mellon University. Might try and reach out to some people there to see about providing some input, some advice, some technical expertise. Tom's got Dan, who is actually he's another software developer. He's a tremendous guy, incredibly smart. A bunch of other people involved with the project. Lauren Postler, who was one of the founders for People for Liberty. Just some really great people with a really great vision of, hey, here's something that that people loved, that we can recreate or improve upon, and get out there and show people that this model of voluntary cooperation works for something that's really, I mean, when you get right down to it, incredibly detailed, very significant, in terms of money and time and investment. But I think long term is best served by making it as open and as available as possible, rather than trying to, I guess, kind of lock it in and make sure that you're controlling it. So that's a tremendous vision from Tom and his team, and I'm really pleased to be able to work with them on this, even in whatever small capacity I can.
Man, that's awesome, man. And you're right. Tom is such an awesome guy. I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to talk to him. I think it was early last month. We sat down and talked, and I mean, he really is just an awesome guy, and I've really enjoyed our conversation too. I'm really glad you came on the show, and we talked about a lot of interesting stuff, man. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Oh, I loved it, man. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's not when you have a conversation that can range from science fiction conventions to furries to what to do in Pittsburgh and wheelchair projects. It's just awesome to be able to talk to folks. Thank you
Man,
so much.
nothing is off limits on this podcast. You're welcome back anytime, man. And I got to hop off here to go talk with Dan. I'll be sure to let him know you said hello.
Please do. And thank
All
you
right.
again for having me on, man.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. That was my conversation with former Libertarian presidential candidate Sam Robb. I really enjoyed our talk. He's got some great ideas, and he's working on some really awesome projects, including one that he's working on with Tom Queter, who was on the podcast a few weeks back. If you enjoyed the podcast, be sure to follow Bonfire Brief Pod on Twitter so you don't miss out on future episodes. Next week, I'm talking with Dan Taxationist Theft Berman, another former Libertarian presidential candidate and former 2022 Texas gubernatorial candidate. You're not going to want to miss that one either. Thanks for listening. All right, there we go. Mark Tippetts, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot, Taylor. Nice to be here.
Man, it's really great to have you on. I know I first became aware of you on Twitter, getting as interwoven into the libertarian scene as I have. And I live in San Antonio. I'm a Texas resident, so I'll be looking to vote come November. And I think like a lot of Texans, there's a lot of us I feel like are not too happy with the two mainstream choices that we have in Governor Abbott and Beto O'Rourke. And I think this governor race is one where people are going to be looking for another option. I know I am. So it's just really really good to have you on the show to talk about that. I want to know, man, how's the campaign trail been treating you so far?
Once again, Taylor, thanks for having me here. It's always a pleasure to be on as many of the shows that I can. So far, the campaign has been very, very successful. It's been very good. We have, when I ran in 2018, we broke all state records as far as number of votes obtained for Libertarian. This go around, we have already achieved some things that have never been achieved before, namely been on the same stage as one of the two-party main candidates. We were on the same stage and debated Beto O'Rourke in Dallas in front of a bunch of students and received tremendous acceptance. But as expected, it is very frustrating trying to run a campaign with the limited resources that you have and with the two-party system that we call a duopoly fighting against you every step of the way. We have proven that they can work together, especially if it is trying to keep libertarians off the ballot. They enacted laws that we have been fighting, and just recently they filed a petition to kick 20 some odd libertarians off of the ballot.
Right.
So it's a struggle. The two-party system, the duopoly, like I say that we call it, they want to keep it a duopoly because they can blame each other for everything that they have done. And I am told all the time, you need to smile more. You need to be more, happy, enthusiastic. But then I turn on the TV and see what the two-party system is doing to us. And I mean, just recently, our founding fathers fought one tyrant 5,000 miles away to not have to pay taxes and for control. And now we're fighting 5,000 tyrants 1 mile away that are enacting new laws, 80 some odd $billion more for 87,000 more tax collectors. If memory serves, that's more IRS agents than the British Army had coming after us. The irony of the whole thing is just so ludicrous, and it doesn't seem like the two-party system gets it.
No, I think you're right. And it's I saw that same thing about them wanting to kick all those libertarians off the ballot. And it's just, if that doesn't show that they see you guys as a threat, I don't know what will. I mean, it's very clear that they don't want libertarians involved in this process at all. And it's
And they're pretty open about just wanting to kick you guys off for that reason. Did they try doing this kind of stuff when you ran in the last cycle or in any previous cycles? And are they going to be successful in kicking you guys off the ballot? That would just be awful.
They have been semi-successful in kicking us off the ballot. They have not been totally successful. Here is the crux of the whole thing: is the Republicans and Democrats, they just have to file a grievance or complaints, and then the Secretary of State runs with it. We are fighting, and then the Libertarians, when we fight it, we have to spend tens of thousands of dollars in fighting these laws to try to get them. They are so unconstitutional. You can read what the judges say about it. They're saying laws like this are obviously, and I'm just ad-libbing here, but laws like this are obviously intended to keep third-party candidates off the ballot. And you have Republicans that control the Congress, that control the state, openly stating that they consider it a dereliction of duty not getting the Libertarians kicked off of the ballot.
Right.
This is, I mean, we need more choices. We need more options, because if we see what's going on with the two-party system, they're really not that much different. They are growing the government. Just turn on the TV. Just watch how they're growing the government, and people don't get it. That, for instance, this IRS growth, it is nothing but to control us and to have a standing army, basically, to control the general public, to take away our freedoms and our liberties. And if we do not fight for them, with every breath we take, with every fiber of our being, we are going to lose them, and we will never get them back. Half of me believes that this fight is over, but I still have to keep fighting. I still have to keep voicing my opinion until it is silenced, and I have no other recourse.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. That's why it's so important to have guys like you and other, a lot of the libertarians that I've talked to, and even other ones around the country. It's so important for you guys to give voters that option, because a lot of us see it in the same way that you do. I mean, I don't know how anyone can see the hiring of, I believe, 87,000 IRS agents, I believe it was. I don't see how anyone can look at that and see it as anything other than the government exercising control that they should not have. And that's why, I was really glad to get you scheduled on the show so I could talk to you about some of these things. But just before we get, too deep into it, could you tell me a little bit about, yourself and your background and, how you got involved with the Libertarian Party and what ultimately, inspired you to run for governor?
Well, my father was a World War II vet. Mm-hmm. He raised his family, basically with fundamental libertarian values. And I've said this before, the Libertarian Party itself, even though it's been around for 50 years, the libertarian ideals and libertarianism was what founded this country. And I have been all my life a libertarian, and I would be a libertarian even if the Libertarian Party did not exist. Mm-hmm. I would still have those core fundamental libertarian values. As far as my background and myself, I was born and raised in Mexico. I am a licensed Mexican attorney. I studied law in Mexico. I got an MBA from Mexico, San Luis Potosí, Mexico. I practice law in Mexico. I am an international legal and business consultant. for people who have businesses or property in Latin America. I am bilingual, bicultural. I am a father of 6, a grandfather of 7. I have lived in the state of Texas. I have had my permanent residency here for over 25 years. I am a U.S. citizen by birthright. My parents were both from the United States. Therefore, I'm a natural-born citizen. And with my background, I view some of the issues, well, actually all the issues that face us, I view them from an out-of-the-box kind of perspective. That I don't have the typical solutions that you'll hear from most politicians of, well, we need more government. We need to put a study in that. We need more taxes, as the Democrats always are going. We need more taxes. We need to pay people more money. We need money, 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 money. And you hear from the Republicans, we need to reduce government. But it's just lip service. Mm-hmm. In reality, they do nothing except increase the government over and over again. My view is, and always has been and always will be, returning the power, and I really don't like using that word power, but returning the rights, the liberties, the freedoms to the people. We were founded to be a government by the people, for the people, of the people, for the people, and by the people. And we have ceased to be that. And there are a lot of issues that I can point to bring this out. For instance, in education, we have to return the rights and responsibilities to the parents. We have to empower the parents to where the education money must follow the beneficiaries, in other words, the students, and the people responsible that know that the students better of what their qualifications are, whether it needs to go to a college, whether it doesn't need to go to college. The parents know more, along with their children, of what education they need and the best way to get it, including with that, the education system and the schools that offer the best security for the children, not a government dictated from Washington with all the federal dollars of what should be done in the schools, or the state dictating what should be done in the schools, because then you have a single idea bringing forth the education for our children. Mm-hmm. It should be the parents that are empowered to make those determinations, along with the schools. And I will add here also the sheriff's department. The Uvalde situation that took place, as tragic as it is, there is, like I said, I'm a father of 6, a grandfather of 7. Nothing bothers me worse than incidences like that. But is what it shows is that we have such a cluster mess with our policing system. There was, how many police entities were involved there, pointing the finger of who had the authority to do this or who had the right to do this other? Simply put, it should have been the only responsibility there should be the sheriff. Anything that happens within a county should be the responsibility of the sheriff. No federal or state agency, policing agency, federal or state, should be allowed to operate within a county without the authority and consent of the sheriff, because he is the ultimate authority. If an FBI agent goes and screws something up, the public can't hold him accountable.
Right.
But we can hold the sheriff accountable.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right, and I'm glad you mentioned Uvalde, because I think that on that day time stood still for a lot of us here, in Texas. So, I said before, I'm a San Antonio resident. Uvalde is, 80 miles and some change west of here. And of course, it's just, absolutely horrific what happened there. 19 students and 2 teachers murdered in school. It's one of the most horrific things you can imagine. And I think you're right in that, you can hold the sheriff accountable, and the families in Uvalde do want to do that. And they've been, taking steps on their own to try to ensure that happens. But what are some steps that you think we can take to help keep kids safer in school? Because, I think the conversation always gets brought back to gun control, and then both sides kind of run off to their camps and their corners, and then nothing ultimately gets done to actually keep kids safe. So if you get elected governor in November, what are some steps you think that you would be able to take that would help keep kids safe in school?
That is a very loaded, and if I may, and if I get off track of where you're trying to make me go, bring me back on track, but let me back off to holding the sheriff accountable.
Mm-hmm.
I am by no means am I saying that in this circumstances we should hold the sheriff accountable, because the sheriff's powers, the sheriff's actual constitutional authority has been usurped so bad that the sheriffs need a governor that will stand up and tell the sheriffs, you have full authority to exercise your constitutional right by being elected sheriff to arrest and throw in jail any agency. I don't care if it's IRS, I don't care if it's FBI, I don't care if it's DEA, I don't care what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Even a state agency, to arrest them and throw them in jail if they are operating in your county without your particular consent and supervision. But until they have that, until they have a governor that will actually back them with all the authority that is bestowed on them to do so, their hands are semi-tied. Why? Because the FBI and some of these federal agencies will come in bullying a sheriff. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we see it over and over again of what happened, and this goes back in history, but what happened in Ruby Ridge, Idaho, what happened in Waco. You had the federal agencies coming in and usurping that authority that belonged to the sheriff. The sheriff could have just calmed those situations down and resolved them. Now, going back to the question of what should be done for the schools and going forward, what you cannot do is have one mindset, which is the same mindset that has created these problems. There is almost no issue that faces today that we cannot track it back to the government actually creating the problem. There is very few problems that we have right today, including the war on drugs, including the immigration, that we cannot trace it back to the government creating the problem. Now, as far as what could be done in the situations to try to prevent situations like Uvalde, you are absolutely correct. It was absolutely gut-wrenching. And I will never, ever say that I know what those parents are going through or went through. I can imagine. And I don't want my imagination even to go there.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing, if everybody will notice, and they criticized me, everybody criticized me, from my own people to Democrats to Republicans, of why I wasn't at Uvalde, why I wasn't interrupting press conferences, why I wasn't yelling this and that and the other. Because it's all Governor Abbott and Beto O'Rourke, is all they did is try to get political capital off of grieving parents, off of grieving individuals. And I refused to do that. There was absolutely nothing that Beto O'Rourke should have said or anybody should have said that was appropriate at that time. It surely wasn't appropriate to point fingers and blame other people for issues on hindsight. However, is what has to be done, not what should be done or could be done. What has to be done is we must empower the parents along with the administrators and teachers with the guidance of the sheriff to institute their own safety protocols. We cannot have the federal government instituting our safety protocols, and we cannot have the state government. We can have the federal government and the state government offering assistance in instituting those protocols. But we must not. As parents, they know best how to protect their children. In a society, we know best who the troublemakers are. When I was going to school, and I probably shouldn't say this, but I will. When I was going to school, anything ever happened in the school, somebody set off firecrackers or whatever, where's Mark? They knew who the troublemaker was. You just know. Okay. And yes, I was blamed for a lot of things that I did not do. And I got away with a bunch of stuff too. So, it was a different time, but the point is you still knew who was who in your communities. And yes, there are some massive, big communities, but it is those communities that must instigate, like I say, along with the sheriffs, the different protocols for safety. And once they are instituted, the protocols for safety for each individual school, then if the parents have school choice, if the dollars actually follow the students, then they can take into consideration the safety protocols that are put in place in the different schools, whether it's public or private, that they can follow and they can choose to send their children to.
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned school choice, because I knew that you were a big proponent of school choice, and I've seen here recently, particularly this past week or so, Greg Abbott has been hitting the campaign trail talking about school choice and kind of bringing that back to the forefront of his agenda. And I was wondering how your approach to school choice would differ from his. And I saw on your website you mentioned I believe a school choice law that was passed in Arizona that you really liked. I was wondering if you could, tell us about how you would approach school choice and tell us a little bit about that plan in Arizona and why you like it.
The Republicans, Greg Abbott, they taunt school choice every election cycle. Mm-hmm. And then they do nothing about it. Keep in mind, the Republicans have controlled the state legislature, have controlled this state for over 20 years. And they have taunted school choice. But what have they done? You could roll back 20 years ago of what the governor was taunting to get elected or reelected. And it was part of it was school choice, but they have actually done nothing when it comes to school choice. And it does take a collective effort to get that passed. But the governor has a lot of, not necessarily authority, but has a lot of bully pulpit power to actually rally the people to force the state to pass the laws to give school choice. School choice is simple. It's very simple, like Arizona. they have school choice. Is all it does is it says that the education dollars must follow the student, and the parents have the right to decide where those education dollars are spent. If you have that, now keep this in mind. The Texas Constitution mandates that the state provide efficient and free education. Mm-hmm. I think you and I can both agree that the education they provide right now is neither efficient or free. However, nothing in the Constitution mandates that Texas citizens must be educated by the state. Mm. The state must provide the means for the parents to educate their children. But the parents are not obligated to have the state schools or the state itself dictate how they educate their children. I don't know if I'm making any sense there. In other words, the state has a mandate to provide the means for the citizens of Texas to be educated, financial means. Mm-hmm. But the citizens of Texas are not, there's no mandate that says they must be educated by the public school system. Right. They can be educated by however they see fit.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this is I think this issue is a really good example of how bad being forced into this duopoly is, because Democrats don't, they don't touch school choice at all. They believe the only option should be, government funded public schools. And like you said, Republicans have been in charge in Texas for decades, and they've never passed it. And I figure a large part of that is because it's, politically convenient for them to campaign on it. I mean, if you're a fan of school choice and, you feel like your only option is, Republican or Democrat, you're going to continue to vote Republican, but you're not actually going to get school choice because it's not something that they're willing to actually make any progress on. So it's really good to see you put this at the forefront of your campaign.
And the Democrats and Republicans, they do this. Well, the Democrats are really blatant in their support of public education. I mean, they openly say we need to tax the people more and more and more money to pay the teachers more and more and more money. And at the same time, they say, well, the parents should have, the rights, but just not to educate their children how they see fit.
Right.
The parents, any parent who wants vouchers are vultures. Those are words of a Democrat. Those are the words of the Democrats of where they stand on school choice. They are totally against school choice at all costs. Why? Because it messes with their base. It messes with what they conceive is their base. My wife was a teacher for many, many years, and she would prefer teaching. She taught in public schools and she taught in private schools. She would prefer teaching in private schools. The education level, according to her, was much higher, much greater. The pay for teachers was so much less because there was not school choice, because the dollars did not follow the students. If the dollars followed the students, the private schools would pretty much dominate because they can institute the programs that best comply with and best suit the parents of their students.
Yeah, and I just want to let you know we've got our little time notification reminder popped up on Zoom. We've got about 8 minutes left. I wish we could have gotten to this. I do want to ask you about the border just real quick here. It's a tough issue to kind of condense down like that, but another really good issue where Republicans and Democrats go off to their camps and nothing ends up getting done. Democrats don't seem to have any plan for reforming our immigration laws, and Republicans that, they like to talk tough, but then at the end of the day, what do they really do that's productive in helping the people down there? What would your approach to reforming our illegal immigration laws be, and how would it differ from your opponents?
First off, let me address two issues in one here: immigration and the war on drugs, shall we say? Okay, because they go hand in hand, and these are two issues that the government have created themselves, and they are political issues that each side derives a lot of political ammunition, or if you will, from those two issues.
Right.
And like I say, they do go hand in hand, and I know these few minutes, probably I will not be able to do it justice, but I will try. The actual war on drugs is a big part of the reason for our vast influx of immigrants at this particular time, because they are trying to escape violence in their own countries, created by the Democrats and Republicans want to say created by the cartels. No, we created them. And this is going to be a bitter pill to swallow. But the drug problem and the cartels and all that, we created them. Why? Because we consume all those drugs. And as long as we are fighting a war against the trafficking of drugs and not getting to the core issue of why we as Americans consume this vast quantity of drugs, we will never solve the problem. We may eliminate one cartel or another cartel, but it will always increase as long as it's a supply and demand. As long as we consume the drugs and they are illegal to consume, we will have this big problem. Most of the people crossing the border are not here, contrary to popular belief, they're not rapists and murderers. They are simple people trying to make a better life for themselves and their family. Something that I would expect you and I to do if the shoe was on the other foot. If we were fighting to protect our family, I would expect that we would fight to get into the U.S. at all costs. We need to make it easier for good, hardworking people to enter into this country legally. Right now, it costs between $5,000 and $10,000, and I don't have exact figures on this, to pay a coyote to come into the United States. Okay, it would cost 3-4 times that if they tried to do it legally the way the system is now. We need comprehensive humanitarian immigration reform, and that has to come from the federal government. As governor, you can use all the powers at your disposal to force the federal government to comply with the laws that they should be upholding. Keep in mind, Texas is in a unique situation because, unlike all the other states, Texas joined the union by treaty. And there are the treaty documents that can be enforced to force the federal government, or at least put a lot of pressure on the federal government, to reform our immigration laws. But they also have to take into consideration the needs of the employers in the United States. Look around the state of Texas. The employers cannot find workers to fill the jobs. And a lot of people say they come to take our jobs. I defy anybody that lives in Texas that has lived here all their life. I defy them to get up on a roof and lay shingles at 100-degree temperature.
Right.
They don't want to do it. They don't want to mow the lawns. It is a false notion that they are coming here to take our jobs. That is a false notion. They are coming here to take the jobs that we do not want to do, and they are grateful for them. But until we take all this into consideration, until we stop the politicizing, the duopoly control of this situation, it will continue as a political hot potato for both the Democrats and Republicans. Every cycle it comes up, and every cycle they do nothing about it.
Yeah, you are absolutely right. It does come up every single cycle, and yet it seems like every single cycle we are in the same boat that we were in 2 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever cycle you want to look at. And we're running out of time here, Mark. I really want to thank you for coming on the show. I wanted to talk to you ever since I heard of you, because like I said, you really wasn't looking forward to having to cast a vote for Governor Abbott or Beto in November. And now after talking to you, I feel a lot better about the upcoming election, knowing I have a pro-liberty candidate that I can, proudly cast a vote for. So, thanks for coming on the show. Thank you for all that you do. If people listening want to learn more about Mark and his campaign, you can go to mark4gov.com. or follow him on Twitter at Mark4Gov. And just again, really appreciate you coming on the show. I had a lot of fun. It was great to talk to you.
I appreciate it very much, Taylor. And I just want everybody to know that we have to fight for our liberties and our freedoms. And this November, you can fight for your liberties and freedoms by voting Libertarian.
Absolutely. As they should. Again, thanks so much, Mark. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it, Mike Taylor. Okay.
All right. We are recording now. Jeff Miller, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having.
Yeah, well, thanks for being on, man. I really do appreciate it. I saw that, you interacted with a couple of the tweets, that I put out for the Mark Tippetts episode. And, after seeing you through that, I wanted to bring you on the show and wanted to start off by saying, congratulations on becoming the Brazos County Libertarian Party chair.
Thank you.
I know it was relatively recently. I don't know when exactly you got elected, but congratulations. How does that feel?
Well, that was back in March, and it was kind of a weird situation because even though I had been the vice chair for the last 2 years, I had no idea that the chair was planning on not running for re-election. He just sort of made it a casual announcement at one of the meetings in February, so it was kind of like didn't really have a lot of time to think about it or consider it, but I just decided to go ahead and try to do it, and I was successful. So that's all there is to that. I'm focusing on trying to get more people in, grow the party locally, and do whatever I can to try to get the message out.
Yeah, no, it's really good too, man. I think I think having libertarians involved on a real local county level is just it's so important for having like a homegrown base, that you can work with. But, with you being the chair of the county party and, you're also running for a state house in District 14. And I know that you've been volunteering with Mark Tippetts' campaign, who was on the show recently. How do you, we were just talking before this, you've always got busy weeks. How do you find the time to do all these different things that you're involved with?
Well, it's not easy because I have a full-time job like a lot of people do. But thankfully, I have the kind of job that I'm not constantly busy with work. Stuff kind of comes and goes throughout the day. So at my office, I can do some of the Libertarian Party activities when I'm at work, which helps because it's if I only could do it when I was off of work, I would have limited hours to do it. But yeah, it's juggling a lot of different things and having to make sure that I have alerts and things set, so I'm reminded of all sorts of online meetings and all that sort of stuff. Sometimes I just end up having to do more than one thing at once. Like, in addition to what you mentioned, I'm also on the state Libertarian Committee for the first time. I was also elected to that in April with the state convention, so I'm one of the two representatives for Senate District 5. And so I've got something related to my duties for that coming up Tuesday night, where I'm going to be interviewing somebody who's potentially a future county chair in another county in our district. And at the same time I'm doing that, Mark Tippetts is going to be doing a Ask Me Anything online stream. So I'm going to be monitoring online for questions for that at the same time. So already there's an example of something where I'm kind of having to multitask.
Yeah, what do you do for a quote unquote normal job, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I'm an office manager. Work for a company that owns 25 different Subway sandwiches locations. So we have different places in the state of Texas, but here in Bryan College Station, all of the ones around here, and then several of the ones in neighboring towns. So I do a bunch of paperwork related to that, HR related stuff mostly, and just, juggling paperwork and answering phones and whatever else I need to do.
Golly, man. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how you do it. All the different things you've got going on. I have no idea. And you do all of this stuff out of College Station there?
Yep.
What's College Station like? I've heard of. I've been living in Texas for a little over a year. I'm in San Antonio. I haven't made my way up to College Station area. What's it like up there?
Well, it's a college town, as you can probably tell by the name of the city. It's where Texas A&M is. So much of the everything in town revolves around the university and events that are going on there. But over the years, we've added some things that were not specifically university related. So, like, we've got the George Bush Presidential Library, and that brings some people to town. And
oh wow,
there's some other. There are things, in Bryan College Station that aren't directly related to the university. So it's most of the school year, pretty heavy traffic because of the amount of people for the size of the town we have. There's always construction going on, always new housing going up, because ever since they uncapped the student maximum at the A&M, we get more and more students every year. So, it's a lot of that. So it's, dodging bad drivers and, all that kind of wonderful stuff.
Oh man. Yeah.
But there's a lot of good things. Yeah. There's, we, of course, as we've grown, we've gotten, a lot more schools and parks and all that kind of stuff. So, there's a lot of families here, and a lot of people, rate the schools pretty highly and say that it's fairly safe compared to some other places of our size. So there's a lot of positive things. I like a lot of things about this area. I've been here 40 years now. So,
oh wow.
Yeah. But I actually get down to San Antonio quite a bit. That's where my mother lives, and her side of the family is from. So I'm there, at least a few times a year, and sometimes more depending on what's going on.
Oh, it's a wonderful city. I had never even visited before I moved down, but I've really enjoyed it so far. Just renewed my lease a little while back. Really love it. I didn't know, I had never been up to College Station area, but I guess this past weekend was like the move in weekend for A&M. So I got a lot of like weird tweets on my timeline talking about like how bad the traffic in College Station is. And
it's still better than Austin though.
I just helped a friend move from San Antonio to Austin, and I've been up in the city a couple of times now, and every time I'm there, the traffic is just brutal. And that stretch from San Antonio to Austin
Yeah.
is not really a lot of fun either.
Yeah, I've
But
driven it many times.
oh, it's just brutal. But man, you're about as heavily involved with libertarian politics as I can imagine one person being, with all these different things you're juggling. How did you get your start in politics, just in general?
Well, that's kind of one of those. Do you want the short version or the really long version kind of questions? Because I mean, I tell people, because there's sometimes one of those questions will come up on Twitter or Facebook or something, and they'll say like, "What's your earliest memory?" Or the earliest memory that you can put a date on. And for me, that was the inauguration of Ronald Reagan, because obviously I know that happened on a certain day. So I know that it was January 20th, 1981. And I remember asking my mother, like, basically what was going on. I was 4 years old at the time, or yeah, 4. So I'm, saying, well, and she said, oh, well, we have a new president. And, the old president, Jimmy Carter, was there at the inauguration. So I said, well, did he not want to be president anymore? She said, no, he lost the election. So he's not allowed to be president anymore. And I remember thinking, that's not fair. So one of my first connections with politics was like how unfair it was that the president wanted to stay and they kicked him out. But, so that was another, my mother used to say that, the thing that she always respected about me from an early age when I was a kid was my sense of justice. So I think that was probably part of it. But fast forward like 7 years, and my parents both went to precinct meetings on the night of the primary election. And my mom went to the Democrat Party one, and my dad went to the Republican. So I had to choose, which one I wanted to go to. And I picked Republican. Again, not because at 12 years old I had any kind of profound idea as to what the party stood for, but I just decided, I liked that one better at the time for whatever reason. Ironically, in today's world where they talk about Republicans are red and Democrats are blue, mm-hmm. At that time, part of the reason I picked Republican is that I remembered that I had seen the pictures on TV of the candidates and the Republicans were blue. So I liked blue better than red. So, so I picked it anyway. But over the next few years after that, I kind of had that kid growing up, kind of casual. I would see the news, I would see what was going on with politics, but it wasn't obviously, I didn't know all the details of everything or understand what was going on. But, as I got older, I paid more attention. The 92 election, I was a junior in high school, and I voted for Ross Perot in our little mock election. And so that was my first example of like being actually crushed as I watched election returns come in. He didn't win a single state. And I'm like, man, this is terrible. And then a couple of years later in 94 was my first actual election I got to vote in. I turned 18 in August of 94. And that was the year in Texas where George W. Bush was challenging Ann Richards for the governor spot. And I didn't like either one of them. At the time, I actually grew to like George W. quite a bit after that. But at that time, one of the things he really campaigned on was bringing back the death penalty. And I was against the death penalty, so I didn't want him to do that. But I didn't like Ann Richards either. So anyway, we come to election time, November 94, and I got my ballot and I looked at the candidates, and there was another guy on the ballot for governor named Kerry Ellers, the Libertarian candidate. And I said, I don't know anything about this guy, but I'm voting for him. So in my very first election, I voted for a Libertarian, not knowing anything about what they stood for. And a couple of years later in 96, what happened in the fall of 94 election is that was the first time the Republicans took over the House in 40 years or whatever it was. So there was this big, Republican revolution and all that. And I, like a lot of people, got swept up in that, thought these politicians actually mean what they say. They're going to reduce government and all this, change everything in the way that everything works. And that lasted a few months before people just sort of fell into the same old habits that they always did as
Right.
far as politicians in Washington. So I was very disillusioned by all that. But for a while there, I was following very closely. Like that was at the time where they first started putting stuff online, like congressional debates and testimonies and the stuff like that. So I would get on there and I'd actually read like full bills and committee reports and things like that. This is, at 18, 19 years old. So obviously I was a bit of a geek for that kind of stuff while there were other people out partying. I was reading this stuff. So it gives you an indication. But come, election time in 96 or primary season, and I went to, I remembered what I did back in 88 with my dad. And I was like, well, do they still do this precinct meeting on election night? And sure enough, they did. So I went to that for the Republican primary, and, they asked if anybody wanted to be a delegate to the county convention. So I'm like, sure, I'll be a delegate to the county convention. So I did. I went there, and in my usual style, I was not going to just sit there and not do anything. They had debates on the platform planks, or if anybody wanted to like speak for or against a part of the platform. Well, there was a part on there about a constitutional amendment to make English the official language. So I got to speak against that plank, and I debated Al Jones, who was the sitting Brazos County judge at the time, because he spoke in favor of it and I spoke against. So but I remember that he respected my viewpoint, even though he disagreed with me when I made the point that, isn't it the Democrats that are always wanting to get more and more federal control of things? And then we've got this amendment saying the federal government is going to tell you what the official language has to be for everything. And he said, yeah, that's a good point. So anyway, so that kind of, I think, shows a couple of things about me. One, that I'm willing to get involved in stuff, but I also wasn't afraid to, get up and debate an elected official on something. I'm not going to say I didn't have a little bit of fear, but I mean, I was willing to do it. And that same year, later in the year, I heard Harry Brown for the first time, who was the Libertarian nominee for president in '96. And he was on like a PBS show, I think, or something, and they interviewed him where they actually give him more than like a tiny soundbite. He got to actually answer some questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I was impressed with a lot of the things he said. He had his book out where it was like huge tax cuts now, huge spending cuts now, and I'm like, this is the kind of thing that the Republicans campaigned on, but then didn't actually deliver on.
Right.
So obviously that appealed to me. So I sent off and I actually joined the National Libertarian Party for whatever the dues was then, like $15 or something like that. And so I got the paper newsletter for a year for doing that. Come 97, I didn't renew it, and I moved on to whatever it is I was doing at that point in my life. But I never completely disengaged from politics. I just obviously had plenty of other interests. And by the time year 2000 rolled around, I had a young child, so that changed my life. My focus was on that. But at that point, I decided, I was fed up with the Republicans. I guess I'd never really had pursued much with the Libertarians. So I thought, well, at that point, I'll see about the Democrats. So I actually participated in the process of becoming a delegate to the county and for the Democrats also. And they, in my area, they're way outnumbered by the Republicans. So they actually, gave me the opportunity to be a state delegate because, they didn't have a lot of people volunteering for that.
Right.
But I didn't end up getting to go, mostly financial reasons. And having a young child, just, couldn't afford for all the babysitting and to be able to get up to wherever it was, Dallas or Fort Worth somewhere, I think. Anyway, so I didn't make it to that. But at that point, I had, in a way, participated in Republican, Democrat, and Libertarian parties. And in my elections, I had always tried to keep an open mind and vote for the individual rather than the party. So there was almost never, like, they had the straight party ticket voting, but they had the thing where you could select that and then still select individual people. So there were times that I would do that, but I never was like, there was never a ballot where I said, well, this is just a vote all people of this party. the irony of that is that by the time that we got rid of straight ticket voting in Texas, I had become fed up enough with Republicans and Democrats that I swore I wasn't ever going to vote for any of them again. And so at this point, I probably would vote straight Libertarian Party if such a thing existed, but it doesn't anymore.
Right.
But anyway, it was 2020, so many years later when I finally actually officially joined the Libertarian Party, in the sense that I showed up to the precinct convention for the Libertarian Party and actually affiliated with the party. And, by the end of that week, we had our county convention and I got elected vice chair. So again, another example of where I just kind of jumped in. It was like, not only am I joining this, but, already put me in a leadership position off the bat, not having any idea what I was doing. So that's, as you can tell, kind of a theme of my life, is that I volunteer for things, I jump into stuff, and then I try to figure it out after I've already committed myself to something.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like you half-ass a whole lot. Like you've been with the Democrats, the Republicans, and the Libertarians, and it seems like each time, whichever path you're on, you went all in on it. You didn't just put one foot in and one foot out. I mean, it seems like you really, really committed, and even early on, like your willingness to kind of think outside the box and not be forced into a duopoly, right? Like you said, vote. You might vote mostly one way, but you did usually split your ticket some, and voting for Ross Perot like you did, or voting Libertarian in the Bush-Richards election. I mean, it always, hearing your story, it seems like it might have taken you a while to officially join the Libertarian Party, but the signs were there early on, it seems.
Yeah, I've always been independent. I've always been a contrarian. At the same time, I'm the kind of dork that watches a politician give a speech and gets emotionally involved. So I don't entirely fall for things like I did when I was 18, 19, where I'd actually, believe in somebody enough to actually get, really upset when they lost, or if they won and didn't do what they said they were going to do. And now I'm much more cynical about it. I don't believe, any politician's really going to do 100% of what they promise they're going to. But yeah, as far as getting involved, I'm like, why be there if you're not going to do that? I mean, that's always been the way that I was. Like, doesn't mean I don't, observe things and kind of sit back sometimes. I don't always speak up in every situation, because some of it is, when it comes to committee meetings and conventions and stuff, a lot of it is just sort of observing the process and seeing how things are done. So, I recently after I was a state delegate, then I was a national delegate to the convention in Reno. So I had a lot of fun there, but I wasn't getting up on the microphone and speaking, and things like that. So, I don't regret that. I could have done that, but I figured I was enjoying things enough, participating in everything that I was doing, that, I didn't think I had to do that, but I'm not afraid to do that if I need to. So that's kind of the deal with me, is I feel like there are things where I know clearly, here's what I want to do, here's what I believe in, and I can speak to it. And then there's other times where, I'm kind of looking at it like, I can see both sides of this, or I'm interested in hearing different points of view and kind of figuring out where I fall on this. So I'm not an ideologue. I've never have been. I've had like kind of basic principles that I believe in. And then beyond that, I'm really more of a pragmatist in a lot of ways. I feel like, do things that actually work. And that's another way of how I got to the Libertarian Party, because I saw demonstrated over and over again that the way the Democrats and Republicans operated was never going to bring more liberty, less government, more freedom. Like, all those things were just slogans and buzzwords that were used by the politicians to try to, secure their own power. And so I looked at it and said, the only way that those things are actually going to happen is somebody who is committed to that as their basic philosophy. It has to be, everything else is subordinate to that. Your goal, it's like Barry Goldwater said back in 1964, I'm not running to pass laws, I'm running to repeal them. That has to be the attitude, is like an actual real change, turning the ship around that's going the wrong direction, not continuing to attach band-aids to the leaks in the boat. It's not working.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a pretty, like you said, a very realistic, a very healthy way, to look at it. Was that mindset what caused you to want to run, for State House in this cycle, or what compelled you to do that? I'm wondering.
So that's another thing where I've always, kind of had the fantasy or idea that at some point I would run for public office of some sort. Probably a lot of kids have had that fantasy about running for president or, something like that. And I'm no exception on that. But, before I do my presidential campaign, I figured, I got to start a little bit lower. But actually, in the beginning, I guess, the end of last year, when it was coming up on the, deadlines for candidates, and our county chair and I would say a very active member of our county party, Clyde Garland, who's run for office many times before, he basically started recruiting candidates. And his purpose was to challenge those specific laws that they passed about the filing fees. So he wanted candidates locally that would run and agree and that would not pay the filing fee. So basically it was like either we all get on the ballot or none of us do, sort of all go down with the ship kind of thing.
Right.
So I was among the people the end of last year who volunteered to do that. So then it was just a matter of what office I run for. And I actually wanted to run for one of the county commissioner spots because one of the things that I was passionate about that really drove me to want to run against people was in 2020, the way that the government just became so authoritarian in the name of virus mitigation. The everything became about, we got to shut down society in order to contain this virus. And it just, all of our freedoms and civil liberties be damned, none of that is important anymore. And it's one thing for the Democrats to go along with that, or kind of establishment Republican types. But when you have an area like I live in that's seen as conservative Republican, and you have those same people that are elected officials that also just rolled over and accepted all of that, from the state level on down to local people. I mean, they had a county commissioners meeting where they didn't have any kind of public hearings. They didn't have any discussion. It was just, this is what CDC or state authorities and things are saying, so we're just going to vote it all in a rush job tonight and accept all these emergency things. And I thought that was a terrible way to approach it. And I was really irritated, to put it mildly, by that.
Oh, yeah.
So I thought, well, I'll run for county commissioner, Well, the problem with that is that the way that they do the county commissioner and justice of the peace and a few things like that is they have 4 precincts in College Station or in the county, and they alternate every 2 years, like which ones are up for election. So one, it's the even districts one year, and then it's the odd ones another year. So my commissioner precinct is not up for election in 2022. It won't be again until 24. So because I wasn't going to move out of my precinct, and they have a residency requirement, you have to live in the precinct you run in. Well, that was out. So I had to look at what else was possible, and I kind of looked at the duties of, if I actually got elected to the position, would I be able to do whatever that position was? So there were things like county treasurer and clerk and stuff like that, where I'm like, I wouldn't really want to do that job or know how to do that job. And so ultimately I said, well, there's still one more local race that, even though technically it's a state position, it's entirely local, because our state house district is entirely within the city limits of Bryan College Station in Brazos County. Which obviously that's not true for everybody's state house district. Some of them include a ton of counties, but ours, just the way that it's drawn, is it's just Bryan College Station. So it's a local position that reports to somewhere else, if you know what I mean. So,
right.
And I thought, this actually works because, I feel like a representative of here. I've lived here for 40 years, like I said. What better representative, could I be? Somebody who has grown up here, gone to the schools, raised my own son here, also worked here, and he came up in the schools here. And so I'm like, I have all this experience living here. I feel like I could do that job representing. The only the real downside to it is because of the way that, for whatever reason, it's structured. The salary for that position is not very much. So it's kind
Right.
of one of those things where I would take a severe pay cut if I actually got elected. But so we've often had people in that position that have the type of jobs where they're like business owners or things like that, where they can take 6 months off of their job and stay in Austin and go to legislature meetings and all that, and not worry about losing their job. So obviously, if I were to be elected, I'd have some decisions to make when it comes to that. But yeah, that was ultimately, I told Clyde and told Bruce, our previous county chair, that I'll run for state representative. And so I filled out the paperwork and I actually assisted in getting some of the other candidates' paperwork done, because I'm also a notary public. So I did that paperwork, and then we got all that turned in, and then we had our county convention, and I was nominated. So that's how that happened.
Yeah, no, that's yeah, that's really awesome. And I think the COVID restrictions and everything that came along with that was it was real eye opening for a lot of people. I think me included. I was very much so one of them. You never really thought about how quickly our civil liberties could just be snatched up with the stroke of a pen, or a decision made overnight without voter involvement or anything like that. I mean, just to to go from living in a free and open society to not being able to stay out past a certain time, or having to wear a mask everywhere you go, or not being able to go into certain places unless you have like a fully updated vaccine card. And I mean, it really blew a lot of people's minds, myself included. Now, we don't have a lot of time left here. Our Zoom timer has started its little countdown, but I did have a couple other things I wanted to ask you. Maybe one of the more important ones being what are kind of the three big issues that you're focusing on your campaign, and how is that resonating with voters, have you found?
Well, I would say that, as I kind of hinted at earlier, the number one thing is reducing basically the size and the power of government and making it actually representative again, bringing the power back to the people, so to speak, is really the top issue. Everything else sort of revolves around that. So, when it comes to those type of restrictions and other things, there was an Emergency Powers Act that they used to justify a lot of that. So I would want to repeal that. I would want to repeal all of the laws that are in place that limit consenting adults making agreements and transactions. It's amazing how many things that the government wants a part in, either to tell you flat out you can't do it, or you can do it, but you have to have a permit or a license, or pay us this amount of fees. And property taxes, another big thing. People are taxed in so many ways, where it's tax on top of tax. And if you leave something to somebody else as a gift or in your will, then you're taxed on top of that. And so there's just so much bureaucracy, taxes, layers and layers of government control. And my biggest thing is just trying to reduce as much of that as possible. So when it comes to individual legislation, our representative is John Rainey, a Republican, and he, comes out and says, here's what I accomplished in the last legislature. And it's a list of new legislation that's passed, new bills. And I would have the complete opposite approach. If I have something like that at the end of my term, it would be, here's the things I got repealed. Here's the things that I got rid of that made you freer. So everything is about, what can I do to give you more freedom? Whatever it is that you're unable to do because there's government in the way, I want to help that get out of your way so you can do it. So as far as resonating with voters, basically every time that I hear someone in a conversation where they're complaining about something that they're unable to do, or regulations they've had to follow, or fees and taxes and things they've had to pay, that's where I'm like, well, vote Miller.
Right,
There's your
right.
way out of that. You've got a choice. You got somebody who's on your side. Small businesses that have, either lost their business completely or been put in a really bad financial situation because of all the extra things they've had to do because of, government restrictions or regulations. Every time I heard my boss complain about, well, we've got to do this and this on remodeling a building because, there's all of these codes we have to follow. I'm not saying that every single city code or things like that is all a bad idea, but there's still so much that isn't about actual safety. It's about somebody's getting paid for this. Somebody, is the one that says, oh, you have to pay this and get this permit and do these things. And, and it's all about sort of maintaining that bureaucracy and those layers of control. So those are the type of things that I take every opportunity to say, if you had me in Austin, I'd be fighting to end that.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And I have to imagine that voters really like hearing a message like that. I talked with Mark Tippetts on our episode about, just the state of Texas politics as a whole. I feel like there's so many races, in particular the Beto Abbott one, where, there's a lot of people that look at both of those choices and go, God, I don't want to vote for either of those guys. And you see that replicated just down the ticket. I mean, pretty much wherever you go. And, I hope people start, doing their own research and looking into libertarian candidates and other independent and third party candidates, and just know that they don't have to be forced into this duopoly. The system is set up in that way to make them feel trapped in one of the two parties. But, I like taking, the opportunity on my show and in my personal life to let people know, like, hey, you're not stuck with those two shitty choices. You you can vote libertarian if you want to feel good about your vote and support support pro-liberty candidates. And we are about
people around here are always, they'll vote Republican because they're scared of what would happen if the Democrats took over. Well, the whole point to me is, let's bring the power back locally so you don't have to worry about who has the majority in Austin, because they won't have that much control over you, so it won't matter as much.
Right. And that ultimately should be the goal. We've got about 2 minutes left here on our timer. Jeff, I really do appreciate you coming on to the show. I wanted to give you these last 2 minutes just to promote anything you want to promote, a website, any upcoming events, anything like that you've got.
Well, so we're going to find out, we're recording this on a Sunday, and we're going to find out Friday whether or not that I'm actually going to be on the ballot for state rep, because that's when we'll at least hopefully find out about the results of the Republicans' lawsuit against us. We didn't even get into that in this, but anyway, they're trying to get 23 candidates off the ballot, including me, because of not paying those filing fees. So we'll find out the results of that, and because that's the deadline as far as getting the ballots going. And once we do, if I actually know that I will be on the ballot, that's when I'll do things like websites or other things, really kind of kick off the campaign in a more serious manner. So as far as now, anyone who wants to can follow me on Twitter at Real Jeffster. And yes, I call myself that because I had the screen name Jeffster before any of these other people did. But then some people, they come along and they try to use my name. So
Right.
had to make sure people knew I was the real one. And yeah, coming up this Tuesday night too, the 23rd, we're doing a Mark Tippetts Ask Me Anything live stream. So anybody hopefully will tune into that, ask him questions, and I'll be part of doing all that stuff as well. So vote Miller, vote Libertarian.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Vote Miller, vote Libertarian, vote Mark Tippetts, and all those other great Libertarian candidates. Jeff, thanks so much for coming on the show, man. I really do appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks a lot for having me.
All right, take it easy.
Hey everyone, Taylor here, and you're listening to the Bonfire Briefing Podcast.
Today, my guest is the Vice Chair of the Tennessee Libertarian Party and the Libertarian candidate for governor in Tennessee, Lemichael Wilson. We talked about ballot access reform, high-speed rail, Roe v. Wade, and more. Hope you guys enjoy the show. All right, we're good to go. Lemichael Wilson, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The pleasure is all mine. When you followed the podcast and I saw that notification, I saw you were running for governor in Tennessee. I think I told you I'm living in Texas now, but I'm from Tennessee, and I saw that you were libertarian running for governor there. I was like, I've got to get this guy on the podcast. That checks a lot of boxes for me, and what I'm looking for personally, in a governor candidate. Of course, I don't live in Tennessee anymore, but, it seemed like we'd be able to have a pretty interesting conversation, I think.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be able to share my vision with you and the listeners as it relates to how we can grow Tennessee, how we can reduce government and increase the liberties and freedoms of the people that reside in Tennessee, as well as business owners and various public and private sectors.
Yeah, and on that, I kind of wanted to start off just by asking you. I did some research on you before you came on, and you've done a couple different things in life: retired pastor, restaurateur. I wanted to know what, and I know you ran for mayor of Memphis previously in the last cycle. So I was just wondering how. I wanted to hear from you in your words. Your journey to launching this campaign for governor.
Well, it was never like a life goal to be a politician or to run for governor. I did pastor when I was in Chicago, and then I came to back to Memphis, which is my hometown, and I opened my restaurant there. I started my restaurant in 2005 when I left the city colleges of Chicago, and when I came back to Memphis, I opened in Memphis, and what I saw was a marginalization and disenfranchisement of the people from governmental resources. And it was disheartening because individuals who had been elected to raise the floor for the people that live in the city were not doing that. So I decided to run for mayor. And much of all of the positions that I've ever had, they ultimately have one thing in common, and that is being a nurturer. So being a pastor at one time, you nurture the people who are your congregants, and they attach themselves to the ministry. And so I ran for mayor, which is another nurturing position. And what led me to run for governor is, once again, the people, looking at how many people have been marginalized by state policies that it just seemed to be most apropos to do that. And primarily because, as the vice chair of the Libertarian Party of Tennessee, we saw the marginalization, specifically with us, as we're considered to be a minor party. And state law allows Republicans, Democrats, and independents to get ballot access with only 25 signatures. But for libertarians and any other minor party, we're required by law to get 2.5% of the number of people who voted in the last gubernatorial election. So this election cycle, that would have been 56,083 signatures for us to be on the ballot. And what that does is it allows people to be able to go to the poll, see on that ballot our designated letter, which is the L, and you know what the candidate stands for. As an independent, you really don't know what individuals stand for. So there's a recognizable competition when we have our party affiliation listed. That was one. The other, though, is the duopoly, be it the Republicans and the Democrats, operate in a capacity to eliminate any type of competitive, recognizable competition. So that then disenfranchises the vote. It suppresses the vote because individuals may not want to associate themselves with Republicans, Democrats, and by their option, with their candidate option not being available, then oftentimes they don't engage in the voting process. And that was part of the main reason that I decided to run for governor, is that we want to be able to affect ballot access so that all candidates have equal access, not equitable, but equal access, that if it is that the number will be 2.5%, then everybody has to get 2.5%. Or if it's going to be 25 signatures, then all candidates should be able to get 25 signatures for whatever race that they run throughout the entire state.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up too, because when I was doing some research to prepare for this podcast, that was the thing that blew my mind. I read, I think Liberty Whip wrote a Substack article about you, and it laid out exactly what you just did, that independents, Republicans, and Democrats only need 25 signatures to get on the ballot, and you had to get, like you said, I think 50 something thousand, and that blew my mind. I mean, it's obviously, one, it's obviously unfair, and two, it's obviously something that, like you said, the duopoly that we have between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, it's easy to see why they don't want, the Libertarian Party or any other third party candidates gaining any momentum and threatening the structure that they've built up. I'm curious, did you know before you ran that you would need to get 50,000 plus signatures to get on the ballot, or was that something you found out in the process?
Yes, very much aware that we would have to get that 56,000 signatures, and part of our conversation as a state party was being able to sue the state for equal ballot access. And in doing so, we believe that it would be advantageous to show the judge how difficult it is to acquire 56,000 signatures. So that was part of the push in running for office, is being able to show a judge how difficult it is, how challenging it is to get 56,000 signatures. But I love competition, so I was in to get the 56,000, and it then puts us in a catch-21 because if we get the 56,000, then a judge could potentially say, well, if you got the signatures, then I don't see what the problem is. So it's still problematic, though, that no candidate or any candidate that is outside of being a Republican, Democrat, or independent has to jump through hoops and leap over hurdles in order to be able to represent the people that would ideally vote for them.
Right. Yeah. And it's, it's especially relevant now in a time where, I feel like maybe more people than ever are looking for something other than, a Democrat or a Republican. They don't feel represented by either party. I very much so consider myself in that same boat. And like you said, with you can run as an independent, but like you said, there's nothing on the ballot that gives people any indication of what you believe. An independent that could be anybody, running
Exactly
on the ballot. It could be any random person that got 25 signatures can run as an independent. You don't know anything about who they are.
Exactly, or what they stand for. As a libertarian, and I've had individuals ask me questions about platform and things of that nature. And at the end of the day, my platform aligns itself with the national platform. I have been endorsed to run by the Libertarian Party of Tennessee. So as it relates to certain issues, the platform is going to directly mirror what the national party has established for our positions on certain issues and concerns. And beyond that, I believe that the people elect individuals into office so that they can best advocate and structure policies around what it is that they would have. And that's why I believe that more legislation should be done at the local level. You elect city and county officials. Those are the individuals that should be able to construct the legislation for a particular area, and not necessarily the state.
Oh, absolutely. I was curious. You're the vice chair of the Libertarian Party there in Tennessee, and you said that your platform largely reflects the Libertarian Party as a whole. I'm curious, how did you get into being a libertarian? I mean, it's like, how did you find yourself, exploring libertarianism, and then how did that lead you to becoming the vice chair of the state party there?
I was a libertarian before I knew anything about the Libertarian Party. I had already formulated my own belief system, and oftentimes what happens is individuals will assume the political affiliation of their household. So I grew up in a Democratic household. People around me were Democrats, and that is what seemed to be what was supposed to be common, and I did not find my place there. Many of the platform items for the Republican Party I did embrace, but I did not embrace the party. It did not feel comfortable. So once I started looking at other parties and looked at the Green Party and the Libertarian Party, Constitutional Party, and things of that nature, I thought that my personal beliefs aligned more with the Libertarian Party, because at the end of the day, I just believe in minimum government and more freedoms and liberties given to the people. And that's what the party stands for.
Right. And that's why I think that, this ballot access reform that you're pushing for is so important, because I feel like there are so many people that are in that same boat that you're in, that I'm in. I mean, there's so many people that just don't feel represented by either party. And, having the libertarian candidates on the ballot, not restricted by these ridiculous laws that are in place, is really important for people to know who's running. And then, people do their own research. People, they vote for, a lot of people vote for the candidate, not necessarily the party next to their name. So, I mean, people would be able to look up these libertarian candidates who are running and see that, oh, hey, there is a party that's, speaking up for what I believe in, like you said, limited government, more freedoms, that kind of, I mean, that's a message that resonates with everyone.
For sure. I mean, at the end of the day, consumers, individuals, people should be able to make the choices for their lives. I own a restaurant, and government will make laws and ordinances that dictate what we can and cannot do, when at the end of the day, people should be able to make a choice whether they want to patronize a business that either supports what they want or does not. It should not be government legislating that. I always address the analogy or the situation with seatbelt laws. We all buy our own cars. We know that seatbelts can either provide safety, or it can provide some safety measures, and we know what the hazards are that are without wearing seatbelts. So, but at the end of the day, it is the individual's choice that is in that vehicle to make that decision. Because now what we see is law enforcement officers issuing tickets for not wearing a seatbelt. So there's a penalty for not wearing a seatbelt. And oftentimes those penalties are issued in areas of poverty. Some communities have a higher poverty. There are more tickets written in those areas than they are. So it's not equitable across the board. And but at the end of the day, it should be a decision that the individual wants to make and not be financially penalized for that. Same difference with I stand for eliminating money bail on certain type of infractions. We're penalizing individuals for living in poverty. You know, for a case of minor possession, and you give an individual a bond of $10,000, they may not be able to afford that. So consequently, they end up staying in jail, staying incarcerated. They lose their jobs. They're not able to provide for their families. And there's absolutely no reason, because they pose absolutely no risk to the community or themselves. And you know, government needs to step back and allow people to be able to be free to live their lives without the oversight that government is doing.
Oh, absolutely. And those are two, you know, really great examples of where government is, you know, I mean, very clearly overstepping their boundary. And like you said, penalizing people for not being able to afford those tickets and that bail. One great thing I love about your website actually is that when you scroll down a little, your website literally has a Venn diagram. And it you know, it shows kind of where you agree with the Democrats, where you agree with the Republicans, and then in the middle, kind of more where there's some common ground, more libertarian policies. I'm wondering, you know, as you're out campaigning and, you know, really solidifying your message, what are some of the big policies that you're focusing on and talking to people about?
So I am definitely talking about ending no-knock warrants. We've seen law enforcement kick in doors, finding themselves in the wrong property, things of that nature. I just believe that there has to be a better way of executing a warrant. So I stand against the party stands against no warrant, ending eminent domain, ending civil asset forfeiture. We have so many people who are losing their property, oftentimes on egregious charges. And, you know, we need to do better by the people. I just believe that we can do better. I would like to see our district attorneys throughout the entire state not prosecute no victim crimes. If there's no victim, then where's the crime? Because government should only exist to protect the rights and liberties of the people. So if the rights and liberties have not been violated or infringed upon, then there's absolutely no need for government to intervene. And then, you know, there are some others where I call them see the possibility moments, where if we see the possibilities of having an intrastate hyperlink transportation system that can connect our major cities quicker than it takes for ground travel and air travel. I mean, I would love to be able to move from Memphis to Nashville in an hour for lunch or something. Or, you know, if somebody lives in Nashville and works in Chattanooga and they don't necessarily have to drive, they could take the Hyperloop and be able to have access to employment opportunities outside of their immediate area. It improves our tourism. You can fly into Nashville and maybe do a concert and then take the transit system to Memphis to do Beale Street. And then it also improves our air quality as we talk about improving environmental justice. That, you know, we don't have as many cars on the highway, and having that type of transit system would reduce our carbon imprint. I mean, there are just so many things that we can be doing that improves the quality of life in our state for everyone.
Yeah, well, as someone who's driven across Tennessee a number of times from Memphis all the way to East Tennessee. I mean, I'd love to see something like that would shorten that drive. I mean, my God,
Oh, for sure.
it's a bit of a pain in the ass to make if you have to. I mean, what would getting a transit system like that look like? I know California wanted to build, I can't remember how many miles of high speed rail, but it ended up being, as as everything else in California seems to, just a massive cost.
Right. So I believe that when I've never seen anything work when government has put its hands in it, but I think that what government could do is foster relationships with the private sector to be able to put something like that together, to establish it. And I mean, we have the land in between the roads now. As you're driving up and down the highway, the land is there to be able to put such a system together. I think that we just have to be able to explore those opportunities, and not have it be a tax burden on the citizens. I believe in eliminating and reducing taxes, and some things we could possibly crowdfund. There are other ways to generate capital and revenues in order to sustain projects rather than always taxing citizens and businesses.
Right. There's another issue that's been in the news quite a bit the past couple of weeks, not just in Tennessee, but nationwide, is Roe v. Wade. It looks like Roe v. Wade is going to be overturned this summer whenever the Supreme Court, releases the final opinion. And I know Bill Lee just recently criminalized abortion pills being distributed via mail.
Correct.
And there's some split in the Libertarian Party on abortion. There are quite a few pro-life libertarians that probably don't mind seeing Roe v. Wade overturned, and there are other libertarians that see it as government intruding where they don't need to be. I was wondering where you fall on abortion generally, Roe v. Wade overturned. What's your opinion there?
So, at the base, Roe v. Wade gave or gives an individual the choice. And I believe that everyone should have the choice to make whatever decisions for their lives, and not government being involved in those choices. I believe I am pro-family. Let me establish that right off the bat. I am pro-family. I don't believe in abortion. That is my personal belief. At the end of the day, though, I don't believe that government should make the choices for individuals as it relates to their education or their medical. I think that as a pro-family advocate, those are decisions that families need to be able to make with their medical practitioners, within the educational field, or whatever is applicable to that issue. So I think that Roe v. Wade should be a state level. There should be decisions made at the state level as it relates to the choices that individuals will be able to make. And then that allows citizens to be able to move to areas that better align with their personal beliefs. I mean, we see it all the time. We see individuals move into communities for better school options. So, if there are some choices that individuals want to make as it relates to their health care, education, or business and things of that nature, then that should be the choice of the individual and not the government. We see individuals make choices to bring their businesses to Tennessee primarily because there's no income tax. So,
Right.
At the end of the day, my position is just always about consumers and individuals having more freedom to make the choices that they need to make. And it is not my place to regulate any of those choices that people have.
Yeah. That's a very fair, very a lot more nuanced than a lot of the takes on a Roe v. Wade that you see out, in more mainstream news.
And
sources.
let me also say, though, because I know that the time is short, let me also say that um, I find it disheartening that the Supreme Court would somehow leak uh, uh, the brief
Mhm.
right the day before the primary. It allows, in my opinion, uh, the Republican and Democratic parties to engage their voter base to try to get them to the polls because they recognize that most people vote emotionally and not based upon some research. So I think that that's a manipulation of the people, that they're really not concerned about whether it was about being able to have an abortion or not have an abortion, or a woman's right to choose. And then I also want to say that it opens the door for more of a conversation around the rights of trans individuals, and how legislation will probably be forthcoming as it relates to them being able to have medical procedures to better align, in their opinion, with the way that they live their lives. I think that government, that the Republicans and Democrats are playing with that type of situation to make sure that they can provide oversight into those type of choices. But where does it stop? Will it stop where interracial couples are having a child, and government decides that we don't want to have mixed babies, and things of that nature? Government should not be involved in making those type decisions. Those should be decisions that families make, and we need to start looking at electing individuals into office who are genuinely concerned about advancing the concerns of the people organically, and raising the floor for the people who have been marginalized, and giving them back their freedoms, and stop government from infringing upon their rights.
Oh, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think I mean, that's definitely crucial. It has to be a part of the conversation going forward about how, both parties are guilty in that. And our time is short here. We have to wrap up here soon. I just want to kind of close out by asking, how is the campaign trail going? I know I saw you had an event in Knoxville. It looked like a pretty good crowd. And then I think afterwards you guys went out and ate lunch or dinner or whatever, and continued the conversation. Man, how has the campaign trail been treating you, and what's on the horizon for the Wilson for Governor campaign?
So the campaign trail has been extremely excellent. People have been welcoming. We're finding that individuals are frustrated with their elected officials, and they're looking for something different. And they are embracing the campaign. The challenge is just being able to get out and be more engaged with everyone, and sharing that message. That is the biggest challenge of crossing the state, and doing that with limited resources. So we're constantly working to raise monies to support the campaign, and not to have a big war chest, but to be able to just afford the things that we need in order to be effective and competitive. Yes, we did go, and we ate afterwards, and then we went and smoked cigars at the cigar lounge that was right across the street. I believe in supporting small businesses throughout the state, and whenever we have an opportunity to engage in small businesses and support them, that's what I plan to do around the state, and bring attention to some of the businesses, and encourage individuals to support them if they're in the area. Um, we have a lot of things that are being planned. I think the biggest is going to be July 2nd. We're in the process of planning a launch for the campaign in Murfreesboro, and hopefully we can have more information about that in the next couple weeks, so that individuals can come to Murfreesboro and connect and get engaged, and hopefully we can go from there. As we talk about ballot access,
Mhm.
I'll be very clear about it, is that I was the only, out of all of our candidates that are running, all of them have submitted their paperwork as independents. I was the only one that submitted my paperwork as a libertarian, and as such, the establishment has moved to invalidate my signatures so that I would not be on the ballot. But that does not stop me from running, because we're pushing a write-in campaign right now, and it is the largest write-in campaign that this state would have ever seen. We are going to all 95 counties to submit our paperwork so that individuals who write my name in their ballot cast will be accepted, and we're connecting with everybody around the state. I am excited about it, and I look forward to being the next governor of the great state of Tennessee.
Man, I'm excited about it too. I'm real excited to see where it goes. And if anyone listening wants to support you and your campaign with a donation, you can go to lemichaelwilson.com and donate there on the website. Whenever you do nail down the details for that Murfreesboro event, let me know so I can help blast that out, man. I'm excited to see where the campaign goes and, what it has in store for you, and follow your journey as the general election approaches, and just want to say, really appreciative that you came on the show today. I'm glad we had this conversation.
Thank you for having me.
All right. We'll have you back anytime, man. Really glad that we finally got this done. Thanks for being on.
Thank you. All right. Have a good one.
All right. You too.
Bye.
Bye. That was my conversation with Lemichael Wilson, Libertarian candidate for governor of Tennessee and the vice chair of the Tennessee Libertarian Party. I'm really glad we got to talk in depth about ballot access reform, because when I read about Lemichael's situation, it blew my mind. It's bullshit that Democrats, Republicans, and independents only need 25 ballot signatures, but Lemichael needed over 50,000. But anyway, if you liked what you heard from Lemichael on this episode, please consider supporting his campaign for governor with a donation at lemichaelwilson.com. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. Hey everyone, Taylor here, and thanks for listening to the Bonfire Briefing Podcast. The intro for this episode is going to be a little different. As all of you know by now, 19 children and 2 teachers were shot and killed in a mass school shooting in Uvalde, Texas. Uvalde is a little over 80 miles west of San Antonio, which is where I live. I wanted to take this opportunity to amplify some ways you can help the local community there in Uvalde. If you live around Uvalde, San Antonio, or anywhere else in South Texas, please consider giving blood at a blood drive near you. Another way to help is to donate money to some of the various fundraisers for the families. Uvalde CISD has created a Robb School Memorial Fund that you can donate to via mail or by sending money through Zelle to robbschoolmemorialfund@gmail.com. If you want to write a check, the mailing address for the Memorial Fund is 200 East Nopal Street, Uvalde, Texas, 78801. Be sure to make checks payable to Robb School Memorial Fund. The City of Uvalde is also accepting donations for medical expenses. Checks should be addressed to the City of Uvalde and sent to P.O. Box 799, Uvalde, Texas, 78802. GoFundMe has grouped all of these fundraisers together in a single category and made them really easy to find. I'll put a link to that GoFundMe page on Twitter when I release this episode. Here's a list of some other organizations that have created funds or fundraisers that you can donate through. The University Health San Antonio, the League of United Latin American Citizens, One Star Foundation, the Community Foundation of the Texas Hill Country, Victims First, Catholic Charities Archdiocese of San Antonio, and HEB even has an option to donate at checkout when shopping both in person and online. If you're able, please consider making a donation. The community in Uvalde has been devastated and they desperately need our help. No one thinks it'll happen in their community until it does. We need to come together and support the people of Uvalde however we can. Just a note before I get into the podcast, this was recorded last weekend before the shooting. My guest today is UFC welterweight prospect Preston Parsons. He's coming off an impressive win over Evan Elder at UFC Vegas 52. We talked about that, his path to the UFC, and what's next for him. Hope you guys enjoy. All right, there we go. Preston Parsons, welcome to the show.
Good to be on.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man. Really do appreciate it. You looked great in your win over Evan Elder. It was just a super impressive victory, especially for someone just really kicking off their UFC career. It seemed like no matter where the fight was, on the feet, on the ground, whatever, Elder just didn't really have any answers for you, in the striking or the grappling. Can you talk to me a little bit about that win and how you're feeling about it about a month later?
I'm feeling good about it still. I'm still kind of living it up. I've never won a big. I mean, I've won plenty of fights, but not a UFC fight. So that definitely means a lot more to me. But Evan is super tough. His kicks were good. My forearms were still kind of lumped up. I don't know if it'll ever go back to normal, but he had some good kicks. But I was training really hard for that fight. I had a lot of good training coming into it. I had a lot of good people in my camp with me. I have a lot of good fighters here at home. A lot of good pro fighters and amateur fighters. I went to Atlanta for a few weeks to train at ATT with the Lima brothers. Okay. So I was pretty confident coming into the fight. I knew that if it stayed standing, I would do just fine. And on the ground, I felt like I could get the submission.
Yeah, well, you looked great on the ground. Like your wrestling was awesome. Like the timing of your takedowns, the reversals, I mean, it was all great. Especially some of your ground and pound, man. You had some moments there where you were throwing just some brutal ground and pound. I think at one point you started raining down some elbows, and you cut him above and below his eyes, and it was brutal, man. I thought you were about to wrap it up there. Were you surprised by Elder's toughness and the fact that you weren't able to finish him?
Definitely, and I was trying the whole fight to get him out of there. Really tough. He was doing a good job when I was in mount to kind of scramble, move his hips side to side. Made it hard for me to control the position to land some good ground and pound. But the ones that I did sneak in, I definitely threw them with intent. So I know I got one of the cuts in the first round. I think it was just like a short elbow. But I think the last one was in the third. But he was definitely super tough. And I talked to him in the ER, and he said that everything I hit him with felt solid.
Yeah, no, I bet it did. You cut him you had him cut above and below, both of his eyes, there at the end of the fight. It was crazy to see it. It was even crazier that he lasted the whole fight. Obviously, just a super tough dude.
Right. That just says more about his toughness. He was super game the whole fight. He was still fighting back the whole fight too. It's not like he gave up at any point.
Right. Yeah. He was still, he was still putting forth offense. He was in there, but man, you were too much to handle in that fight for him. You mentioned your fight camp and the training and everything. I know for your UFC debut, you didn't have a full camp. It was more of a shorter notice type thing. Can you talk a little about your preparation for the fight with Evan Elder, and just how much having that full camp really benefited you?
It definitely helps with everything. It helps with the weight cut. It helps with game planning a little bit. When I fought D-Rod, made my debut, I fought about a month before that. It was June 5th, and I fought in Jacksonville on the regional card, and then wasn't really training too much, kind of taking it easy after that win. And then we had a week notice to fight D-Rod, so we kind of just went for that one. And I definitely wouldn't take it back. It was a good learning experience. But for the training camp, it was supposed to be Luis Cosi before he got COVID, I guess, right before the fight. So I ended up fighting Evan instead. But it was just a lot of hard. It was a lot of hard training, but it was kind of similar to what I've done in the past. I work a little bit of everything. I have wrestling days, jiu-jitsu days, striking days. One thing I focused a little bit more on this past camp was doing a little less sparring and kind of focusing on pad work and hard hit workouts, Tabata workouts. And I had some different coaches kind of work for me this past fight to kind of improve on some of the areas that I needed to be improved in.
Yeah, no, and I think it showed, man. Like I said, just a super impressive win that you had back in April. I want to kind of transition here, talk a little bit about how you got into MMA, because I feel like every fighter kind of has a different story about how they got into it. What was your first experience like getting into combat sports?
It was a little kind of newer, I guess, around the area that I'm in Jacksonville. I started right at 10 years ago. So I was too young to fight. So there wasn't very many amateur promotions to fight for. But I first got into fighting and combat sports when I was really young. I was super into the Rocky movies and just underdog story. And I wasn't the best athlete as a kid. So, but I definitely, just the underdog, kind of being the person that isn't super talented, isn't super athletic, and still kind of make something of it. So that's kind of what got me into the sport. And when I was, I think, 11 or 12, I started doing karate. Then that didn't last that long. But I got into MMA when I was 16, and it was my choice. So I was there every day. I was training every day. I had good wrestling coaches, a lot of good people around, and it's since then just only gotten better.
Yeah. What has that journey to the UFC been like? Did you always know that you would end up in the UFC one day?
Yes, I've always kept that in the back of my mind. I always knew I would get there. Just so 10 years of doing it and not getting there is a little discouraging. So it was discouraging towards the end. But I have a really good manager, Steve Swedish, that kind of really pushed me to get to the UFC and pushed getting me there, I guess. So everything happens for a reason, and time is important. So I think everything happened in perfect timing.
Right. Yeah. And shout out Steve Swedish, man, for helping set this up. Really glad that we were able to, work through him and get this done. When did you know that you wanted to go pro? Like, was fighting pro something you wanted to do? Like when you started training at 16, was it always something you wanted to do? When did you know that you wanted to make cage fighting your career?
I knew before I even started training. I saw it. My stepdad introduced me to some of like the original UFC fights, and I was friends with some of the wrestlers, and I'd always loved boxing in the front yard and stuff. So as soon as I saw MMA and I saw that I could fight, I knew right then that's something I was going to do, and that's what I was going to do.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, I've heard that from a lot of people. It's just like once they finally took that step, to actually making it happen, there was just there's no turning back. It definitely takes a special kind of person to fight in MMA as a career. But for those type of guys like you, like Gabe Green, like a whole bunch of people, you probably can't imagine yourself doing anything different, can you?
No, not anymore. And even before, I'd probably be miserable doing something else.
Yeah. Now, something that was interesting that I heard from Gabe Green, because he grew up out in California, and got his start out there. And I heard you say the same thing that he did, that there wasn't, that it wasn't a big amateur scene in California for him and Florida for you. It's kind of confusing to me. You figure that those would be two states that would have a bigger amateur MMA scene, don't you? You think?
Right, definitely. I know South Florida's kind of always had them, but again, the sport's growing. Just even over the last 5 years, it's grown a ton since then. So, and also for me, I was so young that I wasn't even allowed to fight until 18. So,
right.
When I turned 18, it was on from there on.
Oh yeah, no. And did the lack of amateur opportunities there in Florida kind of lead you to going pro early? If you could go back, would you have had more amateur fights before you went pro, or do you think you did it, just right?
For me, it was never really fine. There was always one good promotion around. I always had Combat Night was I actually Mitchell Chimotley is where I met my manager, and he's always been a good guy and a good promoter. So Combat Night was always there, but other than that, there was no other promotions nearby, and they only came to Jacksonville, I think, once a year. So kind of having to travel to Lakeland, to Miami, and everywhere else to fight. But Combat Night's always been a good promotion for me.
Yeah. Do you still train over there in Jacksonville? You might have already said that, but do you still train over there?
Yes. Yeah. I train here. I own a gym here too. So I own a gym. I have a partner, and we have a good fight team. So we have me and probably like a half dozen pros and a dozen amateurs.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. What, how was that process like, starting up a gym?
The gym I was at before, I kind of ran pretty much all the operations then. I taught all the classes and stuff like that, so it wasn't too unfamiliar for me. But opening up right in the middle of COVID, that was kind of tough. So getting through like the first 6 months, first year was kind of difficult. But then after that, again, I have a lot of good it's not just me there. I'm not the only fighter, so I have a lot of good coaches and a lot of good coaching coming in and out of there.
Right. That's awesome. Do you happen to catch any of the fights over the weekend?
Oh yeah. I watched all of them last night, but one I watched, I guess probably closest is the drawing a blank on their name, but Michelle Ponzian, I can't pronounce the last name that well.
Right.
But the 270ers, the co-main last night, I watched that one. And I watched the main event of two, of course. I think Holly Holm won the fight for sure.
That was definitely going to be my next question there. I think everybody who watched that main event is kind of scratching their head a little bit. I mean, you look at how many strikes Holly landed compared to Ketlin, and Holly had over 10 minutes of control time. I mean, it's really crazy that Holly didn't get her hand raised there at the end.
Exactly. Yeah. Seeing the numbers after the fight just made it even more clear. But it seemed like Holly was the aggressor for the most part too.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I think we were just all expecting Holly to get her hand raised, and then it didn't happen. And of course, they talked to her after the fight, and even since then, she's said that she thought she won, and just like pretty much everyone else except for those two judges sitting there.
She took it well, because I know she had to have been upset.
Oh yeah. I mean, I can't even imagine, and I talked with Gabe Green a little bit about this too. It's just, bad judges have always existed. It's just kind of it's a thing about the sport that, the fans, the fighters, even Dana, complain about. All the time. It seems like there's always some controversial decision that's lighting everybody up. And I saw some people talking about, like ways to remedy that. I don't know how much you can do about the actual judges themselves, but I saw some people talking about, implementing like an open scoring system. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that. Do you think that that's something that the UFC should look at implementing? What do you think?
No, I've seen some stuff like that, but I like the way that it's done right now. I don't think they could do anything much better, but maybe make sure the judges are actually knowledgeable. And I'm not exactly sure, like, if they can see all the numbers right in front of them the whole time. It's all like computerized now, where it shows like how many strikes are being landed. And I know they're watching the fight too, but if they were watching that fight, then they definitely would have picked home to win. So it's hard to say. It's hard to answer that one, but I do kind of like the way it is now, because like it would be a little probably biased if they had a bunch of like an open judging.
Yeah, and I've seen some people say, like if you let the fighters know what the score is going into each round, like you might have some fighters that are like, shit, I'm up 2-3 rounds, why not just kind of coast my way through, you know what I mean? Like, so there are some issues there, but man, I don't know, it's a problem that's been around for a while. And like you said, I don't know that there's an easy fix for it. But yeah, I don't know, open scoring, it's something I think Invicta does open scoring. I might have the promotion wrong, but there is one kind of notable promotion that does it. And I know even with promotions that have open scoring, some fighters tell their coach not to let them know what the round is, because they don't want to know.
Right. Yeah, I'd probably want to know, but how do they do it? Do they do it like on a social media they judge, or is it like a website where they're watching and they can do it online?
I'm actually not really sure exactly how they do it. But it's it's just it's an interesting system. And then PFL has like a unique judging system too, where like the commentators judge the rounds as they're watching them, and then they've got like a whole I've got like an algorithm. I can forget what they call it, something, but like there's an algorithm that they use to determine like who the algorithm thinks won that round. I don't know.
That's pretty cool. That's interesting. I need to look into that more.
Yeah. Go. Yeah. It's I've introduced a lot of my friends to like the UFC and then some other MMA promotions, and PFL is one that always sticks out to them just because of the way that they, that they do things differently over there, especially with the scoring system. It's real neat. You'll have to take a look at it. Yeah. What did you think about the co-main event though? I think a lot of people who were watching last night were really looking forward to to those two fighting. What was your takeaway?
Ponzinibbio, yeah, I think explosive. He's doing all those flying knees and stuff. So I think he fought pretty good. I definitely wanted to see some backflips and more flying knees and stuff. But other than that, it was a good fight. There was a lot of back and forth. It was a close decision. It's hard to really say who won that one as well.
Yeah, it was, just back and forth, the whole way through. Like you said, super, super close decision. I've actually got to wrap up here before too long, but like I was saying earlier, man, your win over Elder was super impressive. I mean, wrestling looked great. You dominated them in pretty much every aspect of the fight. What are you looking at moving forward? What are you thinking's next for you? You have any names in mind? What are you thinking?
I'm watching the welterweight weight class a little bit more closely now that I've gotten some wins, or I got that win. I broke my hand in that fight. I had surgery a week ago, so I'm healing my hand up, but hopefully I'll be fighting again in October. So October, before the year's up, I want to fight again and hopefully fight like a top 15 guy, top 20 guy, get a number next to my name.
Oh yeah. Yeah. How are you feeling after that surgery? How's your hand feeling?
It feels fine. It's been a week now, so it's healing up good. It was kind of surreal the other day. I saw the x-rays and I have a big screw going down the back of my hand now. So that was kind of different to see, but it's healing up good. I can almost use my finger again.
Okay. How long do you think it'll take before you're able to get back in there and get back to training some?
They told me 12 weeks total. It's been one. So I think I'll be kind of training again in 6, maybe a month from now, kind of rolling around and touching a little bit, but I'm not supposed to punch for 12, but I think I can start punching again after 8 lightly and then hopefully smashing things again by 12 weeks and get something scheduled.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely real excited to see you fight again, man. After a win like that, you really just look forward to what's next for, someone like you to come off a big win like that, man. I'm going to be watching close. I'm real excited about it. Just before we wrap up here, you have any sponsors or anybody you want to shout out, anything like that?
Ruby SE, my manager, Steve, my gym, Elevate MMA, and all the guys that train there. And that's about it, honestly, right now.
Yeah, special shout out to Steve again for helping us get this set up, man. I really do appreciate you coming on the show and talking to me. Man. I've enjoyed it. It's been a lot of fun. Anytime you want to come back on, man, just hit me up and we'll make it happen.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks a lot, man. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Bye.
All right. Bye. Hey everyone, and thanks for listening to the Bonfire Briefing Podcast. That was my conversation with UFC welterweight prospect Preston Parsons. If you haven't watched his most recent win over Evan Elder, I would highly recommend doing so. His wrestling, striking, and overall skill set really shined in that fight. You can't help but think that he has a bright future in the UFC. I really enjoyed talking to Preston today, and I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Bonfire Brief Pod so you don't miss the next episode. Also, who should I talk to next? Shoot me a DM or reply to one of my tweets on Twitter and let me know. I'm always looking for new guests to invite on, and I would love any recommendations that y'all have. Thanks for listening.